and his lore as well as the DC cosmology. They also can't get over their bias. Just like Cosmic Armor Superman, the presence isn't as impressive as people think he is. Now, I won't stay here just to make slanders, but actually give you his feats and explain the major things with his aspects and his true being, which has been shown multiple times, but mainly twice if I remember clearly, but I'm not sure. Which is weird, right? But without further ado, how about we listen to the sound of this video, enjoy the lights and the plan put into it. Hello, you get the joke? Now, so the way this would be done is actually firstly, what is the presence? Or who is? The presence is a being who was created by forces and not a force, totally external to him, and was given the privilege to answer the title of God in the form of some Judeo-Christian lore, but he isn't the same as that God, as our God. Now, if you haven't watched my Lucifer video, which you should, at the end of this video, it will be at the end screen alongside my Body Baker or Animal Man, as well as my Swamp Thing video in the description below. During the Lucifer run, we are aware that God created Lucifer, Michael Demiurgus or Demiurg, and Gabriel in his image in which he acts. He used them as tools to shape his creation and gave them powers like his, which is under the context of power to be a god and to create creation, which of course they did for him. The powers these people have are very impressive and immense, to the point each of them can end creation as they see fit to and start anew. Like how Michael, who went through a rebirth, could create the basis of Lucifer's creation while Lucifer did the rest. Now, in Lucifer's runs from mainly 2000 and 2016, while 2018 barely had any references to the presence, but 2000 and 2016 did justice to it. I think it is finally time for you guys to fully buckle up, because you're gonna go through a ride, to be honest. Now, the first thing I want to be addressing in this video is the voice of God and the voice of the presence. Most people really find this hard to fathom, which to date I haven't seen anyone really give a satisfactory sound argument, even while using the scans, of course, and only Webcam Parrot has done a decent job. Now, the first time in Lucifer this voice spoke or notably stated to exist within the comic, the writer did a very good job to blatantly give us the heads up that this voice of God is different from the voice of the presence. And like I said earlier, what the brief relationship of God and the presence is, I would dive deeper into that in reference to Ellen Belloc. The voice of God is the same voice that was shown so many times I can't put the scans here from the Phantom Stranger runs and many more. This voice is a voice seemingly pre-made to speak to the presence or God's creation, as he was God at that time. This voice alone is immensely powerful to make a weakened Michael literally go unconscious, and Michael's God was not up, of course. This same voice is weaker than the likes of the trio capable of taking the presence place as God in creation. But are there any contradictions to this lore? And the answer is not inherently. And why is that? You gotta then look at other statements like the presence referring to himself as God multiple times, Phantom Stranger calling him the divine presence and the presence a lot, and the fact that the dog was still called an aspect of God. Now, breathe in and out. We see that after these statements from Michael, while Lucifer and Michael somewhat was baptizing themselves, because I can't really remember the context or what was going on there per se, but this place, they was talking to the presence, but yet they was talking to the voice of God. And that's the same thing that happened to Michael alone. But some people would ask, isn't this still the voice of God? And my answer is blatantly yes. Yes, of course it is. And that's simply because at this point, the presence was still God of this creation and hadn't abandoned it. So yes, he is the presence, but he is God. After the presence left creation, the position of God could be taken by anyone and has a power just to be God. You take over the position of God, you become omnipotent, basically. Which you would become omnipotent over the creation of that God you are. Take it like this. Michael's power, which the presence gave him the power of God and shared this power given to himself. His name is Yahweh. His name, Yahweh, was written over creation, and Lucifer relatively did the same thing. Even Gyges and Garamas literally took on the role of God, which automatically they became immune to all power, but hadn't yet fully written their name across this creation because they died. In fact, they first thought God had died, and that's the presence. And all this actually took place because of the will. They changed humanity's belief of God, and then they basically became God. And Lucifer did state that his will hasn't changed, and then so he does not believe in them. So they're inherently his own God. This all is still linked to the collective unconscious, which we will touch upon later. This is also consistent with that of the Lucifer 2016 run, in which the presence within the void, which is of course outside the plan, could get killed by Michael. He basically got corrupted and came back as the presence would just keep coming back like blights, simply because of belief of humanity via the collective unconscious. But that's something I will touch up on later in this video. So the relationship between God, the presence, divine presence, the voice, the light, and the plan even have the hand, but that's something we'll touch upon later on. The light and the plan would soon be addressed, but this voice thing is really what fucks up a lot of people's mind. The difference between them is literally nothing. The divine presence is literally presence outside his creation, and his creation is him. Divine presence is infinite and eternal, and Lucifer, anyone who can exist beyond the plan, can see the divine presence in full. This is also a fat contradiction to the plan, which I guess will be brought up soon, or very soon, I guess. Just know, divine presence is the void, but not the overvoid. But this has two arguments which would fall down to Occam's razor, properly deduced, and also could not be any at all. Extra or more proof of the premise is also the fact that Ellen Bullock literally became God of all the creations, as they was joined towards the end of Lucifer 2000, as you can see. And the presence had no rule over it, and blatantly says he's a new God, and as well as admitting to be below Ellen Bullock. And the premium mobile is the room of the divine presence, or the presence. And his voice was heard through the Logos in the Silver City, but how does his voice reach out to other places as God? It is simply because he's everywhere as Yahweh, as well as him using his other aspects, which is the light. The light is basically this flame or bright light form, that takes visual of what God might look like in his conceivable but inconceivable form. He uses this light form to also speak with the voice, which you can see in the scans. And if you kill the light, you basically kill the sound, because they're all separate but one aspect that act of equal power and rule of the original, which of course is still the presence. Then you have the plan. The presence has been stated to do everything with a plan. In fact, I will mention some statements of what this grand plan is from the scans. He says the plan grows outward from him in all directions. Tells Lucifer that he is a necessary part of his plan. Lucifer also tells Dream that he is just fulfilling the presence grand plan. I'm too lazy to look for more, to be honest, but I'm getting stressed trying to break all these baby steps. How about we finally round these up? Basically, I've tried my best, I guess, in explaining this, but let's still get a bit deeper. We do know that the presence is infinite and eternal, which has something to do with the void, or this void. As I said, I would deduce later. Hold that for now. As I was saying, the voice of God is different from the presence when he still is within his creation. The light of God acts codependently with that of the voice. When the presence himself wants to address something when he was still holding the placement of God. And same as the plan from Destiny's book at the edge of creation, which is all of creation itself, in which people like Lucifer escaped the plan, and presence even wanted to know his thoughts to see how he did it, which later on in Lucifer 2016 he did, even showing that as the presence claims omnipotence, right, it's only limited to his creation, and once he escaped the plan, he's not literally that powerful anymore because he can't even read Lucifer's mind. That's funny. And because it is his creation doesn't mean it is his creation. And that's why Lucifer could leave it. But to be honest, did Lucifer really leave his creation? Before that, the presence is beyond his creation in terms of power, as even his children are. The voice of God and other aspects are limited to creation but beyond it. They have shown nothing of such caliber, but these aspects still exist as that of the presence, as his own being and his role, which all adds up to one simple statement also made, that Lucifer tells him his creation isn't really his, as presence who is called God and even referred as the void. All these multiple references, but yet looking deeper, have different but similar context. Presence was created by forces external to him. Even the son of Trigon asks what he calls himself now, meaning he used to be known as the presence, since they all know he is God, and they was referring to the name of the voice. We see Lucifer and his brothers continually make mention of the presence in reference to this corrupt being, which Gabriel corrupted as he was sent to kill Lucifer within the void. And I know a shit ton of you are dying to hear the void argument, but chill. And also the fact that when Raphael looked into the premium mobile, which the presence stays in, he looked through the chair and saw the presence was dead. Even a cherub ran mad from seeing the remains of the presence, which is weird as he doesn't seem to have a corporeal form, but still means they have seen whatever true form he has and fathomed it completely to be dumbfounded of what was remained. Now, the argument about the divine presence being the overvoid is funny, when the void shown in this comic isn't the overvoid, but people fail to understand this. Now, firstly, I understand the void shown has been consistently white, and this seemed very convincing to be the overvoid, but this void turned dark when the presence died, and even had stars and constellations in the background. It was also stated that the void is creation and it is infinite and eternal, which I have mentioned a lot, just trying to make y'all be bothered about it. Silkman did even make a statement that past nor future exist here, and wondering if this creation came before or after Yahweh is futile, and he said that the void is infinite and eternal. We do know that Lucifer could view the void in two different ways. The void was looking more like a cosmic bifrost in this scan, and in this one, it looks like a real cosmos, as shown in the background of when the presence says he is not his own maker. From the context of these scans, it seems like creation dies and forms anew. This thing is called the void. In 2016 Lucifer run, like I said earlier, this same void was shown and the presence was being reborn in this cocoon looking thing. And then he came back for his creation, but it wasn't his anymore, as well as him creating Michael again. With this being said, we do know presence refers to eternity as time, and of course infinity would be space. And it is quite clear there are a lot of contradictions with this claim, but there is one thing that would prove a positive from the claim that this isn't the divine presence, and that's Lucifer saying that the God's power couldn't reach that extent of the void, as well as God being born within this void, as well as him existing talking to Lucifer in it, which this void is stated beyond time and space. In all honesty, it is either they are referring to the cosmos as the void, and to clear up the final contradiction, look deeper. It says that creation rises and falls within this void. So the present is in the void, and we do know his aspects make up creation. The only major contradiction or contention is him stating to be such within the same context of all these, which author's intent doesn't justify anything on that extent of the divine presence, but just death of the author, if that were to be the case. Also, the void being dark when the presence got corrupted. In short, you can say this void could be the divine presence, but highly contentious and very invalid. Another thing is Lucifer didn't fuse with the void, something we aren't even sure of, but we do know it isn't the overvoid. And when I say sure of, we don't even know if it's the overvoid or separate void, but most consistently it's definitely not the overvoid as proven above. And Lucifer just flew out to it and was so insignificant. To further prove this is more on the negative, it is also stated that the presence left the void after he left creation. By the way, that's from the author. They aren't standing in the void, but in the dreaming. So yes, the void still is just this thing out there where a lot of creation actually stays on, right? But this, you could also make argument that is the overvoid, because if creation stays on it, we do know that the overvoid is where creation does stay on. But the main context of this argument is that it is highly contradictory to the presence being the void. The void could be the overvoid, but definitely the presence isn't either. That's the main context, right? So don't be confused, right? I know a lot of you are confused as fuck. It goes like this. Either the creation is the void, but yet it would contradict the presence, as both are stated to be eternal and infinite. The void is also implied to be beyond time and space, because presence is beyond his creation and can't be it, meaning his own smaller creations like Lucifer, which he just illustrated how Lucifer would jump infinity to yet be a facet of him. Lucifer won't be above him, as Lucifer could view all of it. So this whole thing is just stupid writing from the authors, but I am open to more logic, as if I didn't notice little details, please point it out. Other than that, the aspects we know of the presence is still same thing as divine presence, because he is just a divine being, as even Stranger uses his power and has called it a divine power, doesn't inherently mean a facet of presence power is the divine presence. And note, this isn't the same logic that applies to the voice, the light, and the plan. The voice of God is basically divine presence talking, and the light comes with it. The voice can take any form, but still is the divine presence, as stated by Phantom Stranger, who was confused if truly he is God or the presence at that time. And the dog agrees he is the presence. But Stranger only made a statement of the dog being a facet of him in terms of appearance and not might. Okay, maybe might, because we don't even know the appearance of God. But definitely, even if that was to be the case of it being a facet, there's still a contradiction to multiple statements and deduced logic. The voice of God basically was still responsible for death of his creation except Lucifer's, because the voice is still the presence as when the voice comes. That's basically still creation, and creation is an extension of his grand plan, as shown earlier, in which all comes with this light, with his light or grace. Even Phantom Stranger's love overshadowed the light of God from the truth in his life, and God severally uses his light to show Stranger that he is still the presence or divine presence, however you want to call it. Even after Spectre and Phantom Stranger views, they say that they are both servants of divine will and thoughts in a divine mind, which is the presence. We also have Constantine wonder if the dog is God, and the dog says Constantine believes in him, and Constantine is shown to wander in self-doubt. He calls it divine battle, like I said. All this is just divinity stuff, and even Spectre has been called Divine Spectre, but he still is the Spectre. And then also Zoriel addresses him as presence, but in a way that I have mentioned before. He says, and I quote, "He flees your presence," meaning he's leaving his presence, the presence of God. That's the only reason his name is such, because you are in the presence of God. This same voice has classified himself as all-knowing, and his justice is classified as divine justice. Even after being called the voice and shows up like many other scans in this video, he is called the presence still. Severally, Blight is called as the opposite of God, and God and Blight share similar existence, which would be talked on soon. Presence has also literally killed his creation, or nearly. We see him literally eating Michael, as he had eaten a lot already casually. It is stated that without his Skechina, I'll just call it Skechina, which keeps him in check from destroying creation, then he would actually. This Skechina is the female aspect of the presence which dwells on earth. As long as the presence and humanity exist, then it shall exist. Presence stating he was created by forces external to him means this. Firstly, the Overvoid didn't create him, and it is also stated the void, which could just be that of the contradiction, but that's not it, because it refers to the void as waking to create God. But this is also blatantly wrong, as the Overvoid experienced creation on it already and was literally irritated and created monitors. Also, this seems like a lie being told to Sinner as well, and then the Overvoid created creation the Overvoid witnessed creation post the presence's existence, so very contradictory and non-valid. And this could have been a lie to Sinner as well. Very unreliable information, and also this is one thing, while the presence was created by many. This falls to the collective unconscious, which I have explained enough on this channel, but let me brief it. In Lucifer's run, the will of Lucifer was able to overpower the power of God taking over, which is belief, you can say, or most directly stated that belief is the energy of Godhood. So she left the presence creation because they believe in the presence and not her, despite her owning it. And we do know that Hecate was the first primordial light of creation as pure magic, which everything birthed from and surrounds around from belief. If you have been following the Justice League Dark, this won't be hard for you, or you can watch my DC videos to keep up with such, including the matchups. Hecate birthed gods, and this is no exception from the presence. And in this story of 1,000 cats, it also talks about how enough humans believe to be above cats because cats used to prey on them. And same goes for God. Without beliefs, which is shown in 2011 Justice League Dark in reference to Blight, both birth from the collective unconscious, but the presence is stated to be able to kill him over and over. But as long as belief exists, then blight exists and sin for the presence. And this is something I will explain fully, covering up all the holes for those who haven't been keeping up. That would be done in my final cosmology video. And also know that Eclipso did want to kill humanity, so God would just literally die. I think he actually did die. Even Uncle Stan, while fighting Phantom Stranger, did say that the collective will of humanity, or the people, created God. The presence actually is the primordial light that was believed to chase the darkness, and Hecate's belief he didn't exist before humanity, but also he has been implied to in Swamp Thing comic, in which in this same Swamp Thing comic makes mention of humanity's collective unconscious birthing the presence. Most consistently to date, that's most valid. Also, God has too many rivals and ain't looking too good for him, or people that can use his power or beyond, or him stating to have literally died, or implied to, not him stating the right of the authors stating that he has died. And this is nothing even new. Come on, you watch my previous video to see the scans. People like Swamp Thing has been able to even see him breathe in and out and watch over his creation. In fact, the way it was implied, the presence was the creation itself. You have people like Antagon, Swamp Thing, and Body Baker, all relative or even above God. I will link these videos, including my Lucifer video. Now, one of the things people are very curious about, especially in this period, is who is stronger between Perpetual and the Presence. This is really an easy answer, but I will just do a versus matchup for that. Also, there's one more thing I would like to bring up. Two more things, right? Look at this scan where the Spectre does in fact say that the presence, God, and the voice are all the same thing. He just decides to come in any one. He is still the divine presence because his voice is his power. It's really not that complicated, plus everything that has been mentioned in this video. And one last thing is this part where people say that because Lucifer said, and I quote, "Whatever you are, you may have some of him in you. Perhaps you stole his power as you stole mine, but you are not my father." Now, a lot of people really try to ignore every form of logic and evidence shown, right, and take this one scan out of context without actually understanding Lucifer's character itself. And Lucifer clearly, right, even before I even go to what I want to say, clearly with other forms of contradictions and consistencies within the lore of Lucifer and the presence, right, this statement is very much implying, right, and author's intent, Occam's razor, with less, too much assumptions based on logical consistencies, would imply that this particular scan, even from the comic, is saying that, right, the presence literally is not his father because of what he had become, right? Doesn't inherently mean it is not the presence. In fact, there is nothing that even contradicts that, but just headcanon. And also, Lucifer is clearly being metaphorical. In fact, if you really read Lucifer comic well, the amount of times Lucifer literal metaphorical statements have been blatantly mentioned, and to Lucifer's character, that Lucifer is very metaphorical. He does not lie, but he tricks people, right, to get what he wants. And he's a very metaphorical person. Lucifer can say one thing right now. He's not inherently lying, but he's being very metaphorical, right, to the supposed context of whatever he's actually asserting. And Lucifer clearly is being metaphorical. You can see plenty. I think I could drop at least 5 or 6 scans of metaphor being mentioned, relativity to in relative context to Lucifer, right? And here clearly he says, "You stole my power." Clearly, even prior to this, he did call him the presence, and the presence did steal his power, and he did concede that he's below Elaine Belloc, right? After Elaine gave his power, gave Lucifer back his Lightbringer powers. So I don't really see the logic. In fact, this is a terrible argument you could use. Anybody that actually knows how to debate or even understands the context would just utterly one-shot you with such arguments. I believe I have tried my best to logically convince and not confuse you that the presence can be different from God, but he is still God and his aspects are him in a literal context, as if you think, well, the presence is incredibly powerful, mainly within his creation and to an extent outside it, as every plan is a plan of a plan which is stated. But people like Constantine negate such, or those literally beyond his plan, which is his creation that can be collected from him. The presence is high, universal, and it's powerful. And if you found this video informative, you like it, please do to like, share, comment, subscribe. And if you're a DC fan and you like Marvel comics, or a Marvel fan and you like this comics, subscribe. Next week you'll be getting a Living Tribunal video. See you all next time. Peace.